What's up, guys? Welcome back to Dame Untamed. For those of you who are new here, thank you very much for popping in. My name is Nikki, and I am the dame that cannot be tamed. Oh God, I'm so funny. Today we are zipping down to the Bolivian Altiplano in South America to take a look at a 3-day, 2-night adventure on the world's largest salt flats. This is Salar de Uyuni. Our first stop was the train graveyard. The trains have been weathering away here since the early 1900s, when plans for Uyuni to become a major transportation hub fell through. Over the last 100 years, the strong winds that blister over Uyuni have corroded the metal and turned the old trains to rust. Our next stop of the day were the eyes of the salt flat. These bubbling pools are outlets for cold subterranean rivers flowing under the flats. They are known to have acidic concentrations and are used as medicinal waters by the local people. After a short drive, we arrived at the main event, and I kid you not, it was more beautiful than any photo had ever led on. Now, just to make sure everybody's in the loop, Salar de Uyuni is a salt flat, which means it's a vast expanse of ground covered with salt and is formed by the evaporation of massive lakes over thousands of years. Next, we arrived at the Dakar Monument, a large salt statue erected to commemorate the passing of the Dakar rally through Bolivia, and a really great photo op. Just behind the monument is an abandoned salt hotel that now functions as a rest stop and a small cafe. Conveniently, all meals were included in the tour, and our guide set up a very nice vegetarian-friendly lunch for us here. Yummy! Just behind the hotel, there's a salt mound decorated with flags brought by visitors from all over the world. This was definitely one of my favorite spots. The white vastness of the salt flats blends with the horizon, creating the perfect backdrop to take spectacular perspective-defying photos. Luckily, our driver was very experienced, so we spent hours taking some really amazing shots. For those of you interested in seeing the famous mirror effect, you must visit during the rainy season. However, be prepared to miss out on some pretty cool parts of this tour due to flooding and blocked access. Late afternoon, we made it to Fisherman's Island, a limestone outcrop of land full of huge cacti, literally in the middle of nowhere. There was a 30 Boliviano entrance fee, so I decided to explore from the outside because I was on a budget. After watching a beautiful sunset over the flats, we arrived at Hostel Monterios. Now be warned, hostels during this tour are the farthest thing from luxury. The entire hostel is made of salt, there are no outlets and only a few gas heat lamps, and toilet paper and showers are an extra cost. Now, if you don't mind getting a little dirty, it's not a big deal. However, if you are one that would prefer to wash away the stench of a full day's sweat, you might want to consider other options. Daytime temps rose to 20 degrees Celsius but dropped to 0 degrees overnight. After a long day in the sun, this felt absolutely frigid. Each bed had 3 blankets, but make sure to pack accordingly. After getting our puppy fix and breaking it down to some Camila Cabello, we pit stopped in Salar de Chiguana for some cool railway photos, and then we were off to the Sololi Desert, also known as Mars. Due to the lack of rainfall, this is one of the most arid deserts in the world. Over time, the strong winds create very unique rock formations, like the famous stone tree. Next, we arrived at the Eduardo Avaroa Andean Fauna National Reserve, which came with a mandatory 150 Boliviano entrance fee. This reserve's landscape is famous for many reasons, but my favorite were the lakes. The lakes were filled with many different types of birds, including the rare James flamingo, which is one of 3 species of flamingo that call the reserve home. Laguna Colorada is dotted with white borax deposits and gets its red color from sediments and a variety of algae that thrive in the salt water. I'm going to pause it right there for one quick sec. As we were arriving onto the reserve, the altitude sickness really started to kick my ass. The night before, we had slept at around 3,600 meters. But during the day, the reserve gets to heights of just about 5,000 meters. That's a huge elevation gain with no acclimatization time whatsoever. To put that into perspective, that's about 1,200 meters higher than Japan's Mount Fuji. Whoa. Whoa. My recommendation, bring acetazolamide. This is a medication that combats altitude sickness. At the time, had no idea what it was. Since then, I have summited Mount Kilimanjaro and hiked through the Himalayas to Mount Everest Base Camp. So I definitely know what it is and I definitely know the benefits of it. So don't forget it. But unfortunately for me, I spent the rest of the second day's afternoon curled up in the back of our Jeep, feeling like a load of crud. Feeling like a load of crud. Absolutely cruddy. I honestly don't even remember where we stayed the second night. We pulled up in our Jeep and I was in such a daze. I felt like I was like hallucinating. I just kind of like stumbled into the hostel and into my room and just like fell into bed and did not leave bed for 12 hours, not until the next morning. So, yeah, don't forget your medication. Our first stop of the day was the Pocas Hot Springs. The entrance fee was only 5 Bolivianos, but in all honesty, it was early, absolutely freezing, and there wasn't really anywhere to change in and out of your bathing suit. So I opted out of this one as I still hadn't fully recovered from the day before. Next, we made it to Sol de Manana. This geothermal area, characterized by intense volcanic activity, is an otherworldly landscape lined with geysers, bubbling mud pots, and fumaroles, which are openings near a volcano that spew hot sulfurous gases. So basically, we were hanging out in a cloud of rotten eggs. Gross!
Wow, this is crazy.
Shortly after, we found ourselves at the Chilean border, saying farewell to those in our tour group who were continuing on to San Pedro de Atacama. Definitely the sketchiest border crossing I have ever seen. After saying goodbye to our friends, we spent the rest of the day driving all the way back to Uyuni. It was a very long day. All I really remember is just being completely exhausted and feeling disgustingly dirty from the heat, salt, and dust of the prior 3 days. It was absolutely worth every minute though. I would highly recommend this tour to anybody that can withstand a little bit of grit.
Hey, you. What do you want? What do you want? Hey? What are you doing?
For those of you wondering how to get to Uyuni on a budget, I recommend taking the overnight bus from La Paz. The cost is 250 Bolivianos and it saves you a night of paying for accommodation. The bus departed at 10:30 p.m. and arrived just before 7 a.m. I booked through Cruz del Norte and had a great experience as far as overnight buses go. When we disembarked in Uyuni, we were instantly hounded by the hordes of tour operators eager for our business. There is literally no need to book a tour before arriving. The competition is intense and there were tons of spots available for tours departing that same day. It's also way cheaper to book when you arrive versus online ahead of time. In closing, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all the Star Wars junkies out there. The next time you're watching the final battle in The Last Jedi, keep an eye on the landscape. You might just recognize it. As always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. It really means a lot that y'all have watched all the way to the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know what you thought of this tour down in the comments. Is it something you'd consider? What was your favorite part of it? I'd love to hear. I'll see you guys next time for another wild adventure.